All right, everybody. Nice to see you guys again. This is Ajay Kapoor, and I need to put my glasses on 1 second. Yeah, this happened to me several years ago. All right, so listen to this. Ajay is the Global Director of Performance-Driven Marketing for GM, where he reports to the Global CMO. He is responsible for the marketing machine with oversight of demand gen, analytics and insights, marketing AI, marketing technology, data operations, and privacy and consent strategy. So my first question is, couldn't you be doing more?
Like not to. Trying to figure out how to get rid of privacy and consent. Litigation holds are not fun.
He's also, in all seriousness, the recipient of numerous awards and accolades, and I'm actually very excited to be sitting down next to him today. We've got a chat lined up around customer centricity and artificial intelligence, which is pretty exciting. We've been hearing a little bit about it today. But first, since this is GM, who in here, show of hands, has owned a GM vehicle? All right. And also, I'm also curious, what was your first car?
Ooh, 1994 Toyota Corolla, 1.6 liter, 3-speed auto.
You're bragging.
92 horsepower. I was flying around.
All right, so mine was a 1989 Ford Probe GT. It was purple, and it had a spoiler, so I thought that meant it was a sports car. It was also a 5-speed. I had a lot of fun in that car.
Super cool car.
Now, I currently drive a GM, so I feel like I get points.
Hey.
Yeah. I'd love it. All right, so let's talk about some AI. Now, with my company, iSpot, we've been doing a lot to enhance our products, with AI over the last 10 years. But we're just beginning to put that in the hands of consumers. And so my question to you is, how is GM leveraging AI to enhance customer centricity in your marketing strategy? So let's start there.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, right? And AI is like the whole rage. I think I mentioned to you in our pre-call last week, I went out to Google for a top-to-top with our leadership team and Google's leadership team to look at how AI can infiltrate all aspects, right? It was super fascinating what is possible on the manufacturing side, and then what we talked about from a sales and marketing standpoint. And our head of manufacturing was like, how can I use AI to move the least amount of dirt so that I can go build a factory? And I was like, that's actually really cool. That's a really cool use case that means millions of dollars, right? But on our side, like as I think about customer centricity of AI, it ranges from how do we think about synthetic research to get to better insights? How do we think about using artificial intelligence in ad targeting, audience profiling, our analytics, right? Using tools like iSpot, Acemetrics, et cetera, ingesting that and then starting to stitch those things together to understand propensities and coefficients is starting to penetrate. And I think the use cases as we bring in public, our new agency model is really trying to figure out from a creative standpoint in our content supply chain, how do we unleash against, core creative assets, renditions, sizing, et cetera, leveraging AI tools to enable our creatives to actually go after big ideas, create more space to go after transformative brand building and performance creative as a whole. So again, what I'll just state is we look at artificial intelligence more as augmenting our employees and our customers in the work that they need to go do. Maybe the last thing, one of the ideas that was thrown around was Jarvis could be real inside of your car through what we can do from a chatbot standpoint. And so those are the things that we're like, hey, this can start to roadmap where we want to go in bringing artificial intelligence tools to our customers in a way that's accretive versus creepy or any of those things.
Got it. So we've been working really hard at iSpot to track customer journey from exposure to outcome. And I want to know how AI is transforming the way you guys map and optimize the customer journey.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we actually think I've won an award for it, but that's a whole side thing. all jokes aside, it was something we highlighted at Adobe Summit this past year. Mary Barr, our CEO, keynoted there, and what we had done as a proof of concept and now have scaled was using artificial intelligence to drive journey orchestration across all of our own touch points and then into media. And so we created these very complex journeys, specifically around tracks now being replicated for Escalade IQ and Lyric and onwards, that when we did a control expose on that, we saw a 1,400% increase in lift. And it was really about like, individuals were giving us signals, we don't want to talk to you, kind of dropped them out. There were folks that started engaging, start landing them lower into that overall purchase journey, and then handing them off to the dealer network through a leader, et cetera. And we saw a tremendous amount of lift off of that. And from our perspective, it was providing the creative experiences that customers were looking for by using the tools to process these large sets of data, the clickstream that was coming in, as well as other coefficients and things that we were mashing together, and then being able to trigger if that was SMS, email, site personalization, media across channel.
You know, to elaborate just a little bit more on that, what were the biggest challenges in that process?
A ton, right? And it's, first things first, I joked about it. My favorite question about artificial intelligence and these topics is like, what's the contrarian point of view? And it's, you need informational architecture to actually go do this work. And it's not the sexiest thing. Like, we talk about taxonomies far more than we have in years past, and that's actually a good thing. These machines are machines, right? And they will not be able to read and decipher certain different permutations that exist. My favorite test, and if folks have Chat GPT on their phone, feel free to do it. Ask it, how many R's are in strawberry? And you'll see it comes out with the wrong answer, right? So these machines are machines, and we need to understand the short sights of them as well as the power that exists behind it.
Right. That's super interesting. Looking ahead, what do you see as like the most promising AI innovation that could like further enhance this customer centricity with GM and your marketing?
Yeah, so I would say what we're really excited about is the same pressure everyone's feeling, right? Do more with less. Figure out how to drive performance, efficiency, and effectiveness with your overall marketing. And by the way, help explain that to your stakeholders, right? Like, figure out how to bridge this ROI conversation, et cetera. And so, like, personally, I'm very excited about, a bunch of things, but two in particular top of mind. One is shifting our, production to working media ratios through figuring out places where we can creatively put AI to help us, again, on the asset and content supply chain, do the things that we need to do. In many cases, it's different backgrounds, dealer backgrounds, et cetera. Building the necessary toolkits to get the assets that customers need, want to see and touch, faster, cheaper, quicker. And then on the other side, it's really on the measurement and the audience builds and all of the things that have to happen from a heavy data science standpoint, leveraging these tools to be able to do that at scale and speed, and bring a bit more sophistication and provide us a lot more flexibility to drive test and learn, right? Really challenge what the outputs are by putting champion challengers up at scale and really training where these machines need to go in supporting what we need to get done from a marketing standpoint, as well as our articulation of the impact we're driving.
We've been using a lot of machine learning to do modeling and predictive analytics, and mostly in the development of currency. How does AI-driven predictive analytics play a role in your marketing decisions?
Yeah, it's super cool. So like one of the tools, public, we use the Adobe CDP. We've worked with the product team to infuse machine learning, artificial intelligence in our audience builds, right? So I've hit upon it a few times, but you think about it, you're starting to build, tens, dozens, hundreds of different audiences to drive different types of performance. And our ability to start orchestrating that at scale is really critical and important. And, you know, as anyone that has done the actual fingers on keyboard of building an audience, it's not fun. It's not easy. As much as we want to just put a flat file into, I still call it Facebook, sorry, Meta, and like do their lookalike audiences, you still need to be able to augment that, bring in third-party data spines, start to look at, especially in the auto side, 5% of the US population's in market, right? 50% loyalty. I have a 2.5% hit rate that I need to go fit on whatever, 14, 15 million vehicles. It's more luxury goods than anything else. But if you think about our footprint, all of the auto's footprints, we're top 10 advertisers. So you think about that and you go, yes, I need to nurture the next 1 to 3 years out because you never know when you need a new vehicle. But then I also need to figure out how to drive a precision targeting engine against who's actually going to be in market or is in market. So they actually think about considering one of our nameplates and brands.
Can you share like a specific instance where that AI has significantly influenced a marketing strategy?
We're doing some really cool stuff with like Escalate IQ and Lyric and some of the audience builds. And I see some folks on the team that are out here that are working on that. I won't get into like too much detail, but like I said, the public case study around tracks and what we did with Chevrolet and the like 1,400% lift is a demonstration of us unleashing things that we just humanly cannot do at the compute rates that need to happen, and being able to unleash that with parameters that are creative to both the customer and to the business is really critical.
To the crowd, when you guys, just show of hands, when you think about AI, like who's excited about the possibilities of AI? Right.
Who's freaked out? All right. There you go.
That was exactly my second question. Yeah, who's a little nervous about that? And, you know, I've got some of my team here today, and we were having a conversation around AI and what happens when we talk to customers about it. And they're like, whoa, if you're going to say AI, I got to get some lawyers in here, you know? And I want to kind of digress on that for a second and say, or ask, how do you guys balance the need for personalization with the growing concerns around data privacy and consumer trust?
Yeah, it's super, super important, right? And at the foremost, it's putting customer trust and protecting our customer data at the core of it. So I would just say, like, that is one of the critical pillars of what we focus on, and doing this in a privacy-safe manner. So part of the reason I've had privacy as a core mandate, to have it now put into legal because I don't like the litigation holds and the challenges in that space, was making sure that those things tether really effectively. The other thing is, you know, I sit on the board of the MMA, IAB. It's helping to drive the overarching work that we need to do at an industry level around customer trust, privacy, and customer data. Super critical as we think about, you know, both how these AI LLMs are being trained and then unleashed in ensuring that there's ethics behind what is occurring on that front. So those are places that I would say we're early stages as an industry of making sure we have the right parameters, the right oversights, and the right guardrails around it. There's a lot of brilliant people focused on this to make sure, you know, we are protecting customers in the most effective way. And again, I think there's enough case studies over the last decade of when that hasn't happened, Meta. And so you run into your own challenges. And I think we as a marketing industry are learning from that and are going to figure out how to be, you know, progressive in what needs to actually happen, either through legislation or internal processes that are going to be put in place company by company.
Got it. When it comes to AI, how is GM ensuring that it complements marketing strategies rather than replacing completely traditional marketing approaches?
Yeah, it's the balancing act, right? And I think like iSpot's really interesting, tunneling your data, and what you realize very quickly, like we've done a ton of experimentation. We did a total incrementality test. We've turned on, you know, channels, all these things, and linear works, right? Like as much as we want to like bang on it, like it works. And so I think that's part of every mix. And again, as we were talking outside, figuring out how to narrate and put analytics, the value against that is so critical. And it's also the job to be done. Like there's different work for a person that's literally 15 or 30 days out and buying a car. They're likely price shopping. They probably already know the vehicle and they're looking for the color, the features, you know, and the specs that they're looking for at the best price, versus someone who's maybe expecting another child and so realize, oh shoot, I can't have a car. I need a full-size SUV or I need something else. So different jobs to be done, and the use of channels from a media standpoint or activation standpoint becomes really critical. Us being able to put the analytic framework against that means sometimes it's outside of the purview of what AI can actually go do.
Right, right. Here's a two-part question. One of my last questions is, if you can reflect, like, what is the hardest lesson you've learned integrating this technology, and maybe what's the easiest lesson you've learned?
Nothing easy. Nothing easy. I was talking to a person on our team during the last session, and it's like, there's a couple things. One, setting this up, having the right rigors around what needs to actually happen from an information architecture is so critical. Two is actually education, right? Across the company, stakeholders, team, et cetera. It's like, yeah, you work at GM or name company, you can't go to a public LLM, ChatGPT, you know, Claude, whatever, and put proprietary information. It's all of these things that are now, you know, Pandora's box, as folks are realizing that these tools help to make their lives easier. The story I like to tell is my wife and I bought a new build, whatever, a couple years ago, and we finally got landscape in. We didn't design it. We actually just put it into ChatGPT. We're like, here's our zone, and here's the wind coverage, and here's this, and whatever, and what's the lowest maintenance plants that we could put in. And it kicked it out. So it was perfect. But as folks start to realize that, they want that to help them do the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's the balancing act of like proprietary internal information versus what's publicly available, and making sure that that gets partitioned effectively and folks understand what their responsibility is with internal data.
So hardest lesson, there are no easy lessons. What about a favorite lesson?
Does landscaping, right? Like,
I love that answer.
yeah.
That's great. All right.
Just needed to cut my lawn. That would be the best.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel you. I always Google plants that are the hardest to kill.
Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah, it really is. All right, folks, that was that's all the questions I have for him, but we would love to open it up for a Q&A. How much time do we have left? About 5 minutes or so? Questions? All right.
Just generally speaking, we talk about AI in a few sessions here, but we haven't really talked about for everybody, like, there's a variety of applications of AI, but actually, what tools are you using in the daily business around AI? Or is it just some tools that you have, and AI is embedded in those tools? Or are you actually utilizing it to make decisions and to assist you with what you do on a daily basis?
Great question, right? And I'm gonna like kind of deviate and then come back to addressing it directly. So Labor Day weekend, met up with a bunch of our old friends on the East Coast, and there's a handful of folks are in the venture capital community, and there's the hot debate of like, you have all these like vertically niche like AI tools that do X or do Y, and then you have a ton of these horizontal tools like Gemini from Google, or you know, OpenAI, et cetera, that are building these horizontal capabilities. And I'll just tell you my perspective. I think from a corporate standpoint, which means like you got to have a firewall that has to be locally deployed, it has to be protected, so on and so forth. I think the horizontals are far more powerful. So what I got to see with Google Gemini and what they're building out on that front, and how that could then impact across the gamut of things that we need to do, from manufacturing to OSHA regulations to sales and marketing, was fascinating. And so I would just say right now, we're early stages. Like, we're a Microsoft client. Some of us have Copilot deployed on our computers. I use it all the time. I'm looking at a bunch of data in a dashboard. I'm like, tell me what I actually need to know. It's actually pretty decent in what it kicks out. But the deployment, we're just now going to start to gain steam. And so what gets deployed, say, on the creative side could be Adobe Firefly or it could be a different tool. We'll see what that looks like. But that's just from a thesis standpoint. I think you're going to have these horizontals that may have like specialization, like Firefly, very much creative focus, but their ability to cut across multiple domains as LLM and to be able to be trained is going to be probably their differentiation. And then, I would say most companies I've talked to, as well as peers, we're early stages in the adoption, right? And I think, candidly, our employee base is like, deploy these, like figure out how to get it. Because I actually don't want to go build this Excel spreadsheet. I want this thing to go do it for me. For the record, I don't want to build an Excel spreadsheet.
So typically, historically comms have gone through series of manual reviews and, typically it goes through a couple of hands before any sort of marketing comms go out to consumers. What do you guys do to mitigate any sort of risks, like what you mentioned with the 2 hours in Strawberry? I think I read recently that an AI chatbot offered somebody a car for $1, and there was a lawsuit. So what do you do to try to mitigate some of those potential issues or glitches or AI delivering a message that doesn't align with what you actually want
the car one's interesting, right? Because it was a dealer deployed tool. And it was like a negotiation that was happening. It was weird. So feel free to look it up. Humans, right? Like human oversight. And so like I think like guardrails on how these things are actually deployed is really critical. Like we went through, I forget where it was. We went through use cases of like where AI goes wrong. And I was like, give me a mug with a chocolate chip cookie getting dunked in, and somehow the cup was made out of chocolate chip cookie, right? Like, so the interpretation of what the LLM's kicking out may not always be accurate. And so it is deeply important. It's probably ever so more important that there is oversight both on the front end and the back end of these outputs before they go live. And as we start to build confidence that it can happen at scale, maybe you relook at that model. But I think we're so early that having validation, like true QA/QC against what the overall objective is so critical. I think it gets harder on like the audience selection, audience builds, et cetera. I think it becomes far more apparent with creative and other places that we may, as marketers, go use it.
Jerome McCree, quick question for you. What I'm noticing in my organization is different roles have different applications for how they're using AI. And what's difficult is we have a lot of teams that are excited about building broadly, but then when we go and talk to individual teams, it's more nuance and the best practices and how to get the best value out of it. So how are you tackling that with all the different stakeholders that you're talking to and the different ways that they use it?
Yeah, I think it's like, broadness from a corporate enterprise standpoint and then depth from a use case standpoint. Because really, candidly, from my perspective, where you start to see accretive value is like, I have a problem and I can go solve it. And so I think those are the nuances that I believe you're referring to. And the specificity, that to me is where the gold starts. Because again, 0 to 1's the hardest in figuring out how to actually start to apply this, get run rate, get use cases, and then figuring out the mental patterns that where you're going to start to build systems and system level thinking on how AI is going to get used. So I find a tremendous amount of value on, okay, I'm trying to build an audience, or I'm trying to figure out journey orchestration. Here are the like parameters. How can we use AI effectively in that spot? And then, again, it's like, converge, diverge, converge, diverge. So you're converging, not diverging. Look across these use cases. Are there patterns? are there systems that you want to start to build from an AI, standards, protocols, and execution standpoint? I don't know. I'll give you my hypothesis. I think touching, feeling products like vehicles actually matter, right? Like I like COVID was weird, right? And when like you had to digitize stuff, like you did it. But these are tactile, emotional relationships. Told a stat, I like fact check it. It's like over 50% of America names their vehicle. You don't name something you don't care about, right? Like, and so I just think like in the category of automotive, there's other categories. I think it matters. I truly do. We just hired the former CMO of Rivian to lead Cruise. And I was catching up. I was like, yo, that's cool stuff you did at Rivian. And he was like, we just got like proximate. We got scrappy. And guess what? The tactile feel was really important. So they like built relationships within communities. My favorite case example is pre-auto. Like I'm all CPG, I'm all startups from a background standpoint. Because I remember at CPG, we talked about Subaru quite a bit. Because again, they got very proximate and tactile with like niche communities that started to build their positioning, equity, and what they stood for really effectively. That a decade plus later still lingers, stands, and is what, they have this like tribe, the first 1,000 that will continue to follow them, which you can't put a price on.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ajay. This has been a pleasure. Thanks.